Hello everyone. First of all, I would like to acknowledge my heartfelt gratitude for the opportunity that Children's Literature Association quarterly has brought with its 49th annual conference themed City in a Forest. I'll take a few moments to share my presentation slides, so please be patient. The title of my presentation is Ecology of Protest, Introducing Adivasi Resilience and Assertion through select Indian picture books. This is a joint presentation by me, Sridipa, Dandapat, and my supervisor, Dr. Priyanka Tripathi, from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Patna. Now, before I begin my discussion on Adivasi resilience and assertion, it becomes very necessary to illustrate the word Adivasi. According to minority rights group, Adivasi is a collective term that includes larger indigenous group of people in India. The term Adivasi constitutes of two different words, Adi and Vasi. In Hindi, Adi means early and Vasi implies habitant. So together the word Adivasi forms the meaning of earliest inhabitants. The World Directory of Minorities claim that Adivasis are the largest tribal population in India. But it was not until 1950s that Adivasis were constitutionally affiliated with the term scheduled tribes, and they were considered as the legal citizen of India. And since the term scheduled tribe is legal and constitutional, this keeps differing from place to place, state to state, area to area. And therefore, the term excludes some groups which also might be considered indigenous. Now, before mapping the plight of the Adivasi, we must not forget the homeland of the Adivasis, which is India, which is a third world developing country. As we can see through these news clippings, even though Adivasi are the 9% of India's 1.2 billion population, they have to face several kind of issues like land grab, eviction, or forced displacement. Several critics has found how the Adivasis are the one of the largest sections of Indian society, but yet they are the most exploited and deprived sections at the same time. These news clippings are the proof how that shows that how their lands has been taken away and their habitations has been destroyed. And it has been several years after independence, but even after that, the condition, the plight of the Adivasi that kept deteriorating, and they have become the victim of internal colonialism. And as C.K. Janu has pointed out, Adivasi and environment are one and the same. It shows how Adivasi are codependent with nature and how their livelihood and their sustenance completely depend on nature. And when they face forced displacement or they get evicted from their natural habitat, it becomes very difficult for them, and this hampers their lifestyle in a like, broad level. And one of the many reasons why they face such destitute is they get intentionally sidelined from the mainstream media. To the mainstream media, Adivasis are mostly like the cultural puppet or the keeper of Indian culture and heritage. But when it comes to the real life issues as such, land grab issues or their eviction issues, very few mainstream medias take up these issues and capture them in literature. So the change I have found is how contemporary Indian picture books are featuring Adivasi children as the protagonist. The three picture books that I have chosen are The Wi-Fi Girl, written by Mahasweta Devi and illustrated by Kanika Kini, published in 2003 by Tulika Books. Another is The Trickster, written by Rinchin and illustrated by Manjari Chakrabarti, published in 2016 by Tulika Books. The last but not the least is Chipko Takes Root, both written and illustrated by Jayanti Manokaran, published in 2020 by Pratham Books. So these three books does not only show the assertion and resilience of Adivasi lives, but it also elucidates the socio-cultural implication of Adivasi lives, specifically how the Adivasi lives get romanticized ideologically, and at the same time how they get ostracized from the mainstream society. And what these picture books do in this context is they call for inclusivity, respect, and empathy. Now, these texts explore the glorified status quo of Adivasi lives and culture, and at the same time, it shows how Adivasi lives has been exploited for several ages due to the globalization, modernization, and rapid industrialization. Now, coming to the rationale of why picture books, I would like to explain what are picture books. So, picture books are a combination of verbal texts and visual images which are created with conscious aesthetic intention to produce synergy. Now, the reason I chose picture books is they propose multiple modes or they offer several means to deliver the ascribed meaning. The multimodal aspect of picture books, this enables active involvement. This gives ample scope for the child reader for subjective engagement and personal interpretation. Now, coming to the research gap, I have found how apart from development studies, anthropology and or the emerging autobiographical writings from Adivasi writers, representation of Adivasi in Indian literature as well as in Indian children's literature is a very rare sight. Now, the assertion of Adivasi in Indian picture books mark a huge change in the genre of Indian children's literature, and hence this deserves critical attention from the academia worldwide. My objectives are to map the shift in representation of the Adivasi lives through these select texts and to reconstruct the visual verbal narratives through multimodal approach. Now, before beginning the analysis of the Vai Vai Girl, the Trickster Bird and Chipko text route, I would like to explain the phrase ecology of protest that I have used in the title slide. Now, the term or the phrase ecology of protest, I have taken this from P.K. Nayar's article in which he claims that Adivasi existence or asserting Adivasi existence is incomplete without their resilience. If the Adivasi do not show their resistance against the modernization or against the tropes that they have to or the issues they have to face in the modern India, they cannot assert their existence properly. And as we approach Mahasweta Devi's debut picture book, The Vai Vai Girl, I must mention that Vai Vai Girl is also the first Indian children's literature that introduces a tribal girl as protagonist. Now, this text revolves around Moina, a 10-year-old Sabar girl, who is named the Wi-Fi girl because of her endless questions. Now, who are Sabar? Sabar, as Mahasita Devi gives a clue in this picture book, Sabar are an Adivasi community who lives in the tribal belt of Odisha, West Bengal and Jharkhand, and what they do is they act as the servants of the feudal lords of the place, of that place. Now, it has been several years after independence that feudal system has been abolished legally, but even after the legal abolition, it has been years that the feudal system has been practiced in several places. So, what is different about Moina's story is that Moina is a girl who belongs to the Sabar community, but she does not yield to the servility of like her community. She questions the feudal system as well as the malfunctioning society. As one can see in the figure 2, she asks, why do I have to graze the babu's goats? Their boys can do it. Or as we can see in the figure 1, she is lost in her thoughts, but her face shows some kind of discomfort as she is lost in her imagination, but her imagination is not a childish innocent imagination, but this is politically charged, as we can see that she is not very happy because she is thinking about the daily chores that she has to perform. She has to tend goats, she has to go to the jungle to collect wood, she has to walk miles to fetch water from the river, she has to lay traps for the birds, and she keeps complaining about the lifestyle and the problems they have to face being Adivasi. Now, when as the narrative progresses, Moina comes to know from the narrator that she can get all the answers of her endless questions only when she gets education. And since Indian government introduces lots of schemes and policies for the betterment of the Adivasi lives, the huge loophole that keeps that is there in the pathway of betterment of Adivasi lives is that these schemes and policies that don't get implemented properly. One example that we can find in this narrative is that As Moina approaches the school teacher Malti and asks, why shouldn't I study too? Then the school teacher obviously replies that you can study in the school, what is the issue? Then Moina tells her how the school timing like does not match her schedule, because she and other goat herds and cow herds of our community, they have to perform their daily chores. They have to tend goats at that time when the school like opens. So she convinces the teacher with her will, and she makes sure that she and all her other fellow mates, they can avail education. So with this, the story ends in a very positive note, where we find Moina becoming a teacher, but she does not forget her indigenous knowledge and her indigenous identity, but she keeps trying for the betterment of her Adivasi community, by teaching the other Adivasi children and asking them to keep asking questions about the society. Now coming to the trickster bard, we get introduced with the character Renchu, and it through the very like first two pictures, the figures that I have presented, one can see the contrasting reality of the and the change that has taken place in the lives of the bird catching community of Pardhi tribes. So Pardhi is a tribe, bird catcher community that used to live in Madhya Pradesh's jungles. But with the advent of modernization and deforestation, they were compelled to shift to the city area. And since they did not know any other means to get to sustain their livelihood, they had to take up the job of city rag pickers, and they had to from living near jungle, they are now compelled to live in the juggies or the makeshift houses, as you can see in the figure 2. So this shows a very rotten reality and hard-hitting truth of Indian society, as we can find that Renzo with other children, as we can see in the figure 4, they are stuck in the loop of bending, picking and walking, and for miles they have to walk picking waste from the roadside, from dustbins and from drains. And the figure 3 also shows how the contrasting reality of Indian society. In one side, where Renchu, the Adivasi girl from lower class, she is walking through the dump yard and she is picking waste. And in the greener side, which is also a metaphorical greenery, it shows a boy who is probably non-Adivasi and obviously upper class. Uh, he is under the protection of his mother, and he is holding a balloon and enjoying his childhood. So this text not only highlights the oppression against Adivasi, but it also shows the exploitation impinged upon the Adivasi children. Now coming to Chipko Takes Root, this is a retelling of 1970s Chipko movement by Jayanthi Manokaran. The motto of this movement was Chipko, hug the trees. The word Chipko means cling. So in this movement, in very short, I would explain this movement. In this movement, when government officials came to cut down trees for their deforestation program, Adivasi women, they came forward and they cling to the trees, they hugged the trees to save them from being cut. And through the character of Bhotia girl Dichi, the Manokaran shows her socio-ecological concern, and she shows how like this deforestation programs, this causes landslides and irregular floods and affects and hampers the Bhotia community's lives. And through their slogan, soil ours, water ours, ours are this forests too. Our forefathers reached this. It is we who must protect this too. The amalgamation of Adivasi assertion and resilience is reflected in the figure 4. One can see the Google Doodle that honored Adivasi women and the Chipko movement in the 45th anniversary of Chipko movement. Now, in conclusion, I have found how the representation of the Adivasi in this picture book sensitize the readers with social justice discourse, and how this representation shows the alienation of Adivasis added to their exploitation, and how it presents a nuanced and complex picture of the progressive India and raises the issue of human rights for a better society. These are the brief references. This is one of my papers that I have published recently. This talks about how Adivasi girl, they have to go through like thrice alienation because of their gender identity, their class identity, as well as their tribe identity. Now, for any kind of remarks, queries, or suggestions, please drop a mail at Sridipa_2021HS05@iitp.ac.in. I thank all the moderators, organizers, and fellow presenters in ChLA. Since I could not attend this conference in person, I would keenly wait for your mails and observation at my mailbox. Thank you.